So we're looking at ways that pressure can be altered or changed, and one of them is through cardiac muscle contraction itself. So if we look at this cardiac muscle or piece of cardiac muscle, this cell here is an autorhythmic cell. This cell here is a contractile cell. So the autorhythmic cell generates the action potential. So it generates the action potential. Here's the action potential. And it flows through and it's shared through a gap junction into the contractile cell. And it flows down the membrane into T-tubules, just like in skeletal muscle. But in the T-tubules of contractile cells, there are channels that are specific to calcium. So voltage-gated calcium channel. So it opens those calcium channels, and calcium comes over and opens. Basically, calcium floods in from the extracellular fluid. So calcium floods into the ICF from the ECF, from the extracellular fluid, and then it opens channels on the this one here. So, and then that opens channels on the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which also allow calcium out into the intracellular fluid. So we're getting calcium from two places, from the outside of the cell and from the inside of the cell into the contractile cell. So once the calcium is in there, and of course, the calcium comes out into the intracellular fluid, then the same thing happens as in skeletal muscle. So we have the calcium binding to troponin, moving away the tropomyosin, opening those myosin binding sites, cross-bridging occurs, the power stroke occurs, all of that. ATP binds. It's all the same as in skeletal muscle. Okay, so how does that affect pressure? What does that do? Okay, well, in skeletal muscle, we compare the two. In skeletal muscle, tension is relatively the same for every twitch. So tension is the same for every twitch. So what does that mean? That means in order to get a stronger contraction in skeletal muscle, we need to summate. We need to fire the muscle over, and we need to fire it before it can relax. Okay, that will increase its force. That will approach tetanus, which in skeletal muscle is not a big deal. Okay, tetanus is, where all the muscles are totally contracted and there's no relaxing at all. It's like the largest force of a contraction that you can have. Okay, and in skeletal muscle, that's fine, that works. But in cardiac muscle, the size of the tension within a cardiac muscle contraction is not always the same every time. Okay, the size of the contraction in a cardiac muscle cell, contractile cell, can vary or change just by changing the amount of calcium. The amount of calcium So the amount of calcium in the intracellular fluid. Okay. So we can get more contraction by letting in more calcium from the extracellular fluid and just adding more to that intracellular fluid amount above what's in that sarcoplasmic reticulum. So if we do that and bring in more calcium, then we will have increased pressure and increased force. So it'll affect contractility as well. So this can occur by the sympathetic nervous system. Because remember, there are sympathetic fibers that go to the contractile muscle cells as well as to the SA node and the AV node, which we learned in the last chapter. So the sympathetic nervous system can send signals that cause increased calcium release, or calcium release into the intracellular fluid. Okay, so the more calcium that's there, then the more forceful the contraction will be. Again, a contraction of the contractile muscle isn't always the same, okay? Unlike the skeletal muscle, which every twitch is the same and you have to summate them to make them more forceful.